Welcome to Bella's Coyotes Desnudes, or Beautiful Naked Coyotes. This is the PTC's very first ever queer poetry night. It's the end point of a very long process that started with this lady here. This is Diana Bellesi. She's an Argentinian poet, and so the godmother of LGBTQ plus poetry in Latin America. And she was here last year for a tour, and initially this whole thing was started as a sort of way to join up the tour, but it's a year late because time makes no sense anymore. I'm going to introduce you to three people in a moment. We have Leo Boix, who's a chair tonight. He's a poet, a translator, and a journalist. And I'm going to be introducing you to our two translators, John and Paula. It's a very exciting moment because this is a lot of firsts for us. Not only is it our first queer night, but also the first time we've ever translated out of English into another language. Paula translated Scottish poet Jackie Kay from Scots into Spanish. And also, I think it's good to mention the title of the event because they're going to talk about it in more detail, but we had to change the quote from the poem. The title of the night, the line from an Osvaldo Bossi poem. We had to sort of slightly alter it to gender neutralize the last ending. But because we thought it would be more dramatic to do it this way, we're going to have people run onto stage as though they're gymnasts. So doing cartwheels, we'll have Leo. Leo was fully prepared to do cartwheels, but for health and safety reasons, we talked him out of it. Walking entirely on her hands, it's Paula. And she just forgot her gymnastic gloves and therefore couldn't walk on her hands. But again, she was totally up for it. And finally, doing backward flips is John.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's really exciting to be part of this program, and I'm really excited to be introducing Paula and John today. And so before we go into introductions, I thought it would be nice to start with by reading Diana Bellesi's poetry. This book that I translated, To Love a Woman, Amar a una Mujer. We launched this book, or we did a reading with Diana last year here, and it was really exciting, and I remember that night, and Diana as well. So we're going to start by doing a reading, the first poem of the collection, and so Paula Galindez, one of the translators, is going to read the poem in Spanish, and I'll read it in English. Yeah.
Thank you. Una mujer trabaja, hila, borda paisajes que el sueño delata. Cruzada la línea del rey que prohíbe, se unen el deseo y mirada. Una mujer rosa, en otra su luna, de seda las hojas, la selva que alza, velamen en rojo, nocturno la nave, zarpa. Dueña de inmensa bahía, se deja bogar por una mujer desnuda encubierta. Ella, la luna, a la luna abraza.
A woman works. She spins. She embroiders landscapes that the dream gives away. When crossing the line of the forbidden king, the gaze and desire are united. On another woman, a woman wraps her moon of silk leaves, the woods rise. Red is the sail, nocturnal the ship sails. The owner of an immense bay, she lets herself be roamed by a woman naked on deck. She, the moon, that the moon embraces. So with that poem, we're going to start talking a little bit about the program, the Queer Digital Residency that was launched by the Poetry Translation Center. And it was a program that was part of Diana Bellesi's coming to the UK and launching her book, the first time that her poetry was translated into English. So the program was basically designed to put together two translators, one from the UK and one from Argentina, translating a queer poet from Argentina, in the case of John, Osvaldo Bossi, and in the case of Paula Galindez, she translated Jackie K here in the UK. So it was a 7-month program, and it included workshops, seminars, and it was a really exciting scheme. And in the next week, they will travel to Argentina, and there will be a launch at the Universidad de San Andrés in Buenos Aires, where they will be reading the work, but they're in Buenos Aires. So it's a really exciting exchange of poets and translators. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Paula Galindez. She's a poet, translator, and translation professor born in Argentina. She earned a BA in literary and audiovisual translation in English and has translated books from English and German into Spanish and from Spanish into English. She has studied creative writing and translation with renowned Argentine writers such as Alberto Muñoz, Andy Nachon, and Pablo Ingberg. Paula has published a poetry book, Fábricas, with the publishing house Salta el Pez in 2019, and is currently editing a second poetry book to be published in 2023. She has won and been shortlisted for several prizes, grants, and scholarships for both her poetry and her short fiction in Spanish and English. In 2021, she received a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to edit and translate an anthology of 19th century English-speaking women poets. So Paula is going to be reading Jackie K, and Jackie K, of course, is a really well-known Scottish poet, playwright, and novelist, known for her works Other Lovers, 1993, Trumpet, 1998, and Red Dust Road, 2011. Kay has won many awards, including the Guardian Fiction Prize in 1998 and the Scottish Mortgage Investment Trust Book of the Year in 2011. From 2016 to 2021, Jackie Kay was in Macca, the Poet Laureate of Scotland. So, Paula.
Hi. Thank you, Leo, and thanks, Bern, and thank you to the Poetry Translation Center. Actually, this has been a wonderful opportunity for me. You will have to forgive me. I'm not used to speaking English like this much. I do speak English in my everyday life, but actually I don't speak English, I write English. So if I make some mistakes, you'll have to forgive me. So today I'm going to be reading some of the translations I made from Jackie K. Some of you may know Jackie K. She's actually pretty well known here. But it's been such a wonderful opportunity to translate her because I actually got the chance to talk to her about some of the translation decisions I made. Does anybody here speak Spanish? Yes! We have 3, 4, 5 Spanish speakers, yay. Okay, I thought nobody would understand. So John is gonna help me here. Actually, John helped throughout the whole process. Like, I don't think this was a requirement of the Poetry Translation Center, but we met like every week for the past 6 months. And we talked about poetry, and I asked him questions about Jackie's poetry, and he asked me questions about Osvaldo's poetry, which was awesome. So today he's going to help me, and he's going to read Jackie's originals, and I'm going to read my originals, because they are originals as well.
Caravan Avilochen. The rain on the caravan roof, a skin drum, or birds dancing. And in the morning, the hens come to the caravan steps, feathery feet, on the hunt for bacon, maybe egg. Then, guess what? Big surprise. The period arrives. I'm 11. You're 11, Galindez says. Some don't get them till they're 14. Lucky you. Don't tell your brother. Brothers are not supposed to ken. And then to the chemist in Aviemore, in the Morris Minor, to get the towels Mum says are like nappies. I'm disappointed. They're nothing like nappies. I'm all emotional. You'll feel all emotional. It's natural. In the caravan, in the middle of the night, Claire turned to me, the wee curtains shut tight. The rain pitter-pattering the roof. Wheeshed, wheeshed. I went dead quiet. Not a word from me, not a word. You've a forest there, Claire said, softly. She had no pubic hair. Then she pushed her tongue to the roof of my mouth, and we kissed, we kissed, we kissed. We really did.
Sorry. Camper Avielojan. La lluvia en el techo del camper, un tambor de cuero, pájaros que bailan, y por la mañana las gallinas se acercan a los escalones del camper con piecitos de pluma, buscando panceta, tal vez huevo. Y entonces, adivina, ¡qué sorpresa! La menstruación llega. Tengo 11 años. 11 años, dice Claire Innes. Algunas no les viene hasta los 14. ¡Qué suerte la tuya! No le digas a tu hermano. Los hermanos no tienen que saber. Y después, a la farmacia de Aviemore, en el Morris Minor, a comprar toallitas que según mamá son como pañales. ¡Qué decepción! Nada que ver con pañales. ¡Qué sensible estoy! Vas a estar re sensible, es normal. En el camper, en medio de la noche, Claire se dio vuelta hacia mí, con las cortinitas bien cerradas, la lluvia traca que traca contra el techo. ¡Shisht! ¡Shisht! Hice un silencio sepulcral. Ni una palabra dije, ni una palabra. Tienes un bosque allí, dijo Claire, bajito. Ni un vello púbico tenía ella. Entonces me ensartó la lengua en la boca hasta el paladar y nos besamos, nos besamos, nos besamos, de verdad.
Yeah, you might have noticed that I'm not from Scotland, so oh my god, I should practice this more.
Yeah, sorry. Bantam is written, like, some of the poems are written in Scots and some in standard English. That was a challenge translating, so John is going to do his best to read this one that is in Scots.
Yeah, you're going to get like a gay South Manchester approximation of Scots. Okay, so it's called Bantam. My father at 87 remembers his father at 17. It wasn't men they sent to war. It was boys like the Bantams. Wee men named after smart chickens. Or later, a jeep, a bike, a camera. That needy, for soldiers, they dropped height restriction, so small men came to war. As a prisoner, my father's weight dropped, and years later, the shrapnel for the song shot out, a wee jewel hidden in his right arm.
Mi padre a los 87 recuerda a su padre a los 17. No fueron hombres que mandaron a la guerra. Fueron pibes como Gallo Bantam, hombrecitos con nombre de pichoncito, o después de jeep, de bici, de cámara. Por necesidad de soldado bajaron las restricciones de altura, así que vinieron jovencito a la guerra. Cuando fue prisionero, mi viejo bajó de peso y después las esquirlas de Some salieron disparadas, una joyita escondida en el brazo derecho.
The imaginary road. The road that was in your head, has already found you walking. When you looked up ahead, it was your footsteps waiting. Then you heard the song of the road, under the dirt and the dust, heard the song of the Delta Blue, and found a song you already knew. There are roads there in the beginning, roads that take us to the end, roads we can't help loving, the dips, turns, and bends. There's something about you now, small figure walking the track, growing into the distance, avoiding the dips and the cracks, trying not to look back. The road that was in your head, the road that was in your head is already up ahead. The road that was your friend will be waiting in the end. It will hold out a helping hand as you draw your line in the sand.
El camino imaginario. El camino que tenías en mente ya te supo encontrar caminando. Cuando miraste que había al frente, te estaban esperando tus pasos. Y oíste la canción del camino bajo el polvo y la tierra. Oíste el blues que cantaba el delta y encontraste una canción que sabías. Tenemos caminos desde el principio, caminos que llevan al final, caminos que no podemos no amar, con sus cuestas, curvas y giros. Algo te anda dando vueltas ahora, pequeña silueta de la senda que hacia lo desconocido crece, que evita las cuestas y las grietas, intentando no mirar lo que deja. El camino que tenías en mente, el camino que tenías en mente, ya está allá, al frente. El camino que te acompañaba, te esperará donde todo acaba, te dará la mano que necesites cuando traces en la arena tu límite.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was really brilliant. Really amazing poems and translations. We will talk more about those poems after the break in the Q&A. But before that, I'm going to introduce John. John Herring is a linguist and early career translator who lives in London. His undergraduate degree was in Spanish and French literature, and he spent several years teaching English to young adults in Madrid and Bilbao. He then lectured in linguistics at Oxford and Sussex and undertook research projects on theories of language mixing among Spanish-English bilingual communities in Miami, and a large-scale survey of linguistic variation in contemporary British English. He has also worked as a speech and language therapist in secondary schools across London. He's halfway through the MA in literary translation at Norwich, and his first piece of autofiction is published by The Word this summer. So, John, it's all yours. Oh. So I will be reading Osvaldo Bossi in Spanish. Los poemas de amor que el coyote le escribió al correcaminos. 4. Sueño mucho con el correcaminos, y en las mañanas es el pip pip del despertador el que me recuerda, con los ojos hinchados y el cuerpo estremecido por la caída interminable en el abismo, recupero mi nombre de cazador. 5. Solo pido que me dé la oportunidad de que le hable, que me deje explicarle la fuerza de este amor, un instante tan solo para mí, y que al decir pip pip sienta que no es una burla. 6. Mañana cumpliré muchos años. Mi único deseo es despertar y ser el correcaminos. Quiero mirarme como él me ve. 9. Mi amigo, el Pablo, me llamó por teléfono. Ya sabe algo de mi oscura obsesión y me desaprueba. Me trajo un álbum de bellas coyotas desnudas que yo miré por cortesía, fingiendo atención. Él se quedó más tranquilo y yo jugué a ocultar esa extraña fascinación y caída por lo imposible.
I'll just give a bit of a little introduction. So Osvaldo has written lots of collections which use kind of well-known characters. He uses Shakespearean characters. He writes about Batman and Robin, and this is a set of poems which are love songs that the coyote is kind of writing for Roadrunner. And as Ben said, the beautiful naked coyotes are you'll find out what they're for in a moment. I can't remember how many there are because, anyway, I've translated, Leo read the numbers out. I've translated 4 of them here. So the first one is number 4. Coyotes love poems for Roadrunner. I dream of Roadrunner all the time. And in the mornings, it's the beep beep of the alarm clock that reminds me of him. With my bulging eyes and body braced for the endless descent into the void, I reclaim my name, Hunter. 5. All I ask is for the chance to speak to him, for him to let me explain how strong this love is. Just one moment for me. And when he says beep beep, to feel he's not mocking me. 6. Tomorrow's a big birthday for me. My only wish is to wake up to find I'm the Roadrunner. I want to see me like he does. 9. My friend Paula phoned me up. He already knows about my dark obsession and he disapproves. He brought me a photo album of beautiful naked coyotes, which I leaf through politely, feigning interest. It made him feel better and let me practice hiding this strange fascination, this descent into the impossible.
Octavo poema al Robin. A veces sueño con salir de la prisión de mi cuerpo y entrar en el suyo. Aunque sea otra prisión, no importa, entrar en esa red de carne, aliento, glándulas y suspiros. Tomar el café en la mesa de la cocina, mirarme en el espejo, usar su maquinita de afeitar. No digo toda una vida, me conformo con un relámpago de lluvia en la ventana. Es cierto que cuando toco su pelo o sus hombros me caigo adentro y pierdo todo recuerdo de mí, pero no dura mucho. Enseguida salgo expulsado y vuelvo a mi lugar. Aún así, qué hermoso sería dormir toda la noche sobre su almohada, irme por el hilito de saliva que cuelga de su boca, como por un tobogán hacia otra luz. Salir de mí, eso quisiera. Todo un fin de semana y volver a la noche.
So yeah, this is a book of 31 poems for Robin, narrated by Batman. And I think Osvaldo said in the interview that the greatest thing that Batman has is not his like millionario, his kind of like inheritance of millions of pounds, but it's his relationship with Robin. That's the most important thing. I'm on this final page. Number 8. Sometimes I dream of leaving the prison of my body and entering his. Even though it's just another person, it doesn't matter. Entering that network of flesh, breath, glands, and sighs. Drinking a coffee at the kitchen table, looking at myself in the mirror, using his little razor. I don't mean a whole lifetime. I'm happy with a bolt of rain on the window. It's true that when I touch his hair or his shoulders, I tumble inside and lose all sense of myself, but it doesn't last long. I'm spat right out, put back in my place. But wouldn't it be beautiful to sleep on his pillow all night? To set off on the little thread of saliva hanging from his mouth, as if down a slide towards a different light. To escape myself, that's what I want, for a whole weekend, then just come back at night.
A veces creo que llegó el fin del mundo. A veces creo que llegó el fin del mundo y mientras esperamos la resolución de quién será el elegido para entrar al paraíso y quién no, mi amigo, de lo más impaciente, me dice: Leo, no aguanto más. Todo ese chamullo de la mentira y la verdad, de lo bueno y lo malo, me tiene harto y ya no aguanto más. Pero Rafa, vayamos a escabiar, Leo, y hagamos el amor y después escabiemos y miremos la tele tirados en la cama. Miremos la tristeza infinita de King Kong cayendo desde la torre más alta hasta el fondo de un precipicio y hagamos el amor y escabiemos y hagamos el amor, cual un bello cátulo de 19 años que no tiene la menor idea de quién es cátulo y ni falta que hace.
Sometimes I think it's the end of the world. Sometimes I think it's the end of the world, and while we're waiting for the decision on who'll be the one chosen to get into paradise and who won't, my friend super impatiently says to me, Leo, I can't take it anymore. All this blah 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 about truth and lies, what's good and bad, I'm just so sick of it, I can't take it anymore. But Rafa, let's go on a bender, Leo, and make love, and then another bender, and let's watch TV lying in bed. Let's watch King Kong's infinite sadness as he falls from the highest tower to the foot of a cliff, and let's make love, and go on another bender and another, and make love. Like a beautiful 19-year-old Catullus, who's got no idea who Catullus is, and who cares anyway.
Thank you so much, John. That was really beautiful. I have a few questions. Some are quite general, but sort of I want you to talk a little bit about the how you decided to translate Osvaldo in your case and Jackie in your case. I remember when I gave you that session where we talked about all the different Latin American queer poets and Mary Jean, I think, spoke about queer British poets. Why did you decide to go with Osvaldo and Jackie?
I really should have prepared some answers, shouldn't I? Yeah, I think I read from your recommendations and from my friends' recommendations. I probably read about 8 or 10 different poets, and this is maybe a bit of a cop-out, but it was a real gut reaction. I just loved his stuff straight away, and the variety of it, and I think we're quite close in age, and it's nice to think that you're in different continents, and but you share some of the same experiences, and he put some of those things into words as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the way that he played with characters, like the things that I read earlier with Robin and Coyote and Roadrunner, and I like the poem in the video. That a lot of his poems are in that kind of vein of a real yearning and kind of like talking about these tiny little micro moments that are so important in life. So that, yeah, it was very easy to choose him.
Thank you. And you, Paula?
Well, in my case, when I applied for the Queer Digital Residency, one of the questions was if we had already thought of a poet we would like to translate. And I mentioned Jackie Kay because I know her, like her books from, I don't know, I think I read her like 10 years ago for the first time, and I really liked her. I didn't think it would be possible actually to do it, but it ended up being possible. And when we had the seminars where they told us about the queer poets from Great Britain, well, from the UK, I actually read a lot of different poets. But I came back to Jackie because of something that Mary Jean Chan said, which was the fact that queer poetry doesn't only have to do with with sexuality and gender, but also with the queerness of the language. used, and Bantam in particular is written in Scots and in standard English, and I think I read some of that in the fact that she wrote in both languages, and also the way she plays with sounds and words and everything. I found like that had a lot to do with queerness in poetry as well. So I went back to her, and that's why I chose her, I think.
I wanted to ask if you think that there is a certain way of translating the queer body, or if there is if it's possible to translate a queerness, and how was it for you, that experience? I mean, you talked a little bit about the gender sort of nouns and adjectives, and it's quite a broad question, but yeah, especially because we're doing this residency that is specifically for
Do you want to start, or you can start? Okay. So you already heard a lot from me, like in that video. I want to say that all of that video is Bern's fault. He persuaded me to show my face. I don't know why I did that. I don't have an Instagram account or anything like weird. Well, but yeah, there's lots of different angles to answer that question. On the one hand, the thing that I already talked about, like the gender in poetry, is a great challenge for a translator, trying to keep it ungendered when it's ungendered, or trying to keep like gender awareness in what you're translating. But it's not only that. I think that, when I had an interview with Bern at some point for a podcast, and he asked me what I thought was the best thing about the Queer Digital Residency, what the best thing that it gave me. And I think I answered something like, it gave me the possibility to loosen up a bit and to play around. And I think queerness in language has a lot to do with playfulness. So the answer would be no, I don't think there's just one way of translating queerness. I think there's lots of ways, but there's also, I think all of these ways have to do with flexibility, trying to be flexible and playful, and trying to find the right place of the poetry in the target language.
That's quite a tough act to follow. Yeah, I think actually at the start of the residency, I think I talked to Nick and Bern a lot about ideas about the intersection between queer theory and translation theory, and it's quite interesting. I can't remember if I already mentioned, but I'm like really new to translating. I've been doing it for about 1.5 years at most, and so I kind of I expected that I might be really playing a lot with messing around with stuff, and like maybe I kind of really pulled back from that. I thought I'm not going to do experimentation for its own sake. It was more like responding to what I found in Osvaldo's work, and some of the times I felt like actually I was really translating in a straight way. I really wanted to keep his line boundaries, and some of the effects that he kind of creates through form, and so to sort of like mess with that felt like it might be a bit of a betrayal of the work. But I think also you asked about the body, and it's like in the caravan poem that Paula translated that we read earlier, and in like really a lot of the ones of Osvaldo's. I mean, I had probably about 200 or 300 poems to choose from. He published his whole anthology of collected work a couple of years ago, and I did genuinely choose them all at random. But I think they were most of them were actually about two men together and bodies as well, and that seemed really important to sort of include that in the ones that I chose.
Thank you. When I asked Osvaldo a few questions for the video, one of the questions was, I asked him if he thought that the task of translating poetry was a political act, and also if ultimately it was an act of love. And I want to ask you that, to you, and if you think that translating poetry is a political act and also an act of love, especially, listening to what you were saying, you spoke with Jackie, you met her, there was this kind of relationship, this connection that happened because you met her, because you talked to her, but also because you were so involved with her poetry and you spent a lot of time with her poetry. And the same with you and Osvaldo, although you never spoke with him or barely exchanged emails with him, not many emails, but in your film you said, I've been living with this poem for many months. So what's your...
It's your turn.
Okay. Yeah. Genuinely, I didn't contact him because I was shy about it. And also he lost his phone about a few months ago. I remember I saw him on Instagram saying, "I've lost everyone's contact details. Please contact me." So he hasn't got my number anymore either, actually. Politics. I think. For people who were born in the 60s and the 70s. And he talked a little bit in his intro about the differences between the historical kind of landmarks of the two cultures and stuff. I think it's still political to write about these kinds of things and for them to be published. In Jackie's case, by a mainstream publisher as well, and Carta Olivia as well in Argentina. And about love, I think that it sounds. I'm saying this on video, right? But I kind of fell in love with him from reading his stuff. The earliest things are from the 90s, or maybe even late 80s. It's his whole life in the anthology, and he's very open about stuff. One of the ones actually, I almost chose it to read tonight, but it's quite a long sequence. It's called Fever, and he wrote it in the 90s, but it was not published at the time, and then it was included when the book was re-edited about 5 years ago. I think Paula probably has it with Jackie as well. If you spend a long time with someone's words, then you probably are going to end up falling in love with them.
Yeah. So about the political stuff, I definitely think it's a political act to translate someone. Jackie K's poetry specifically is very political. It talks about politics, but Osvaldo Bossi's poems, the ones that John read, are not overtly political, but they are actually political. I remember one of our first meetings, and you asked about paredes sin revocar. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. It's exposed bricks, and you were trying to come up with a way of translating that. I don't know if you reached a good version or which version you reached, but you were thinking about the fact that exposed bricks here are fashionable and they are very chic and that stuff. And when Osvaldo talked about ladrillos sin revocar, he was talking about a very humble house where you wouldn't have enough money to have an actual wall, and you would have exposed bricks over there, and how to convey that when you're translating poetry. I think that has to do with the political side of translating, and I think that definitely translating has to do with politics, and you have to be politically aware. And the love thing, yes, I definitely think it's an act of love. And I agree with John, if you spend enough time with somebody's words and you learn to love them, you end up falling in love with them. It happens to me. I think it happens to everyone, that at some point we go through life and we have to do all this stuff like lots and lots and lots of stuff, and we forget to stop for a bit and love it, like look at it, really look at stuff. Like I don't know what the corner of my house looks like because I always go by and I never actually look at it. And sometimes when you've been translating for a long time, you forget to stop and really feel what you're translating. And I think when you're translating poetry, you have to force yourself, like, to stop at some point and say, okay, now I know everything that I think in theory, I know everything that I want to do with this poem. Is this actually conveying the emotions that it conveyed to me at first when I first read it? So I have to stop and really give myself the time to not think about the theoretical and all of that, and actually think about what I'm feeling when I read my translation. So yeah, it's definitely an act of love.
In your film, John, you say, or you wrote, translation or translating is navigating the roads and pavements that someone else laid out. But it's my footsteps you're seeing. I'm following Osvaldo's as closely as I can. And it really made me think a lot about visibility and invisibility and the task of the translator to always try to be invisible and sometimes appearing here and there. And also the contrast between these two films, where in your film you were absent, you didn't speak, although you wrote. And in Paula's, she was present, she was talking. And I was thinking about the queer body and queerness in general, visibility and invisibility, and how sometimes we have to make ourselves be visible or more visible. And this idea of visibility. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about this in translation, but also in relation to kind of queerness. Because I know that for some translators, all they want to do is to be invisible, to be as quiet as possible. But there are moments, as you showed in your film, you turn a corner and you suddenly see that a shade. And in the sense, as you were saying, you read an original in Spanish, because it was your creation. So, yeah.
I think I was, like, there's quite a lot of accidental stuff in that film. But you just made me realise, actually, that I was doing a bit of a double bluff there, really. Like, I'm kind of maintaining that I'm behind the camera and you can't see me apart from the shadow pop stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think it's quite cheeky. I put a lot, like the white words coming out on the screen are actually really intrusive. I knew they were intrusive, but it's like, kind of trying to have it both ways, like saying, I'm not here, but I am, this is what I'm thinking. Kind of linking back to what I was saying before as well, like being a relatively new translator, I'm enjoying playing with, keeping quite close, so following closely in his footsteps. I mean, there's a bit of ambiguity there as well. It's like, do I want to be a poet as well? I don't know. But yeah, no, it was definitely kind of saying that, he's made this map, he's constructed the Great Yarmouth that I've walked through that day, or well, he hadn't, but that someone else has put down the tarmac on the road and stuff. But in the film, it's me bobbing up and down, and so similarly when you read the English, I chose those English words. I would never say that it's not as well as poetry at all, but that I'm kind of that, yeah. And I think that does link in with what you were saying as well. Yeah.
I think your film was genius. I really enjoyed it. Like, I watched it yesterday, and I think it was genius, and it completely illustrates like the position of the translator when you're translating poetry, and the invisibility and the visibility stuff, and the part of the shadow. I think it's amazing. I don't know, like there's a lot of pressure for us translators to be invisible, but it's absolutely impossible to be invisible when it's you writing, and you're always writing an original, and there's always like a creative part to translating. And I had thought of a lot of things to say, but then I heard John and I lost all of them. So, but yeah.
I was thinking also about the short that Osvaldo made for us that we saw at the start. Me and Ben did the subtitling for that, and I loved it. Like the moment when he says, of course, poetry, like writing poetry, is translating experience into words, and I think that it feels really arrogant. No, not arrogant, but like he said translated to poets too, and I was like, like a poet just said that to us. That's really nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also, the reader, the power of the reader, and the kind of completion of that kind of translation happens when there is someone reading that translation. So it's sort of an act of love between poet, translator, and reader. So that was actually quite a lovely idea, that we all, as sort of like a communion, we all sort of making it happen, us and all of you. And
Yeah, I think at some point when you translate, you're always like inventing a language, a new language, which is like when you're translating poetry, that is somewhere between your own language and the language of, in my case, Jackie K, and in your case, Osvaldo. And there's like, I don't remember who it is, but there was this translator, she translated children's books mostly, and she said that translating can be a window or it can be a mirror. It can be a mirror of the target culture, in which case you adapt all of the references into the target culture, or it can be a window into another culture. And I think translating poetry has to find like a kind of balance between being a window towards another poet and still being a kind of a mirror to the new target reader, which will be definitely different to the target reader of the original poem. So yeah, you're kind of creating a new language, which I think is kind of awesome. Mm-hmm. And it's a language of love.
I wonder if you have any questions for us before we close. If there is anything that you want us to say further. Otherwise, my last question is: we were talking about this before. What makes a poem a queer poem, or we were talking about Diana Bellesi and her relationship with this, with queerness and defining her poetry as queer. And we were saying, is it because the poet is queer? Is it because the poem is a queer poem? Is it because the language is queer? Is it because of the desire of that lyrical voice? What makes it queer? Is it because the translators are queer? What makes it queer? And I really was thinking about this when I was translating Diana and last year, and also like we had many Q&As with her, and lots of people asked her questions, and she was like, well, I'm more than that, I'm other things as well. Yes, it's fascinating.
Yeah, so I think the answer would be all of the above. There's in my opinion, there's lots of things that can make a poem queer. All of the things that you mentioned could be it. I know, and I think queerness also has to do with not being labeled and not being fixed into one specific place. So that's why the answer is all of the above, because the answer is movable. And it's not like this poet, this specific poet is queer because of this, and this specific poet is queer because of that. It's just like they can move around all of these options, like being actually queer in their sexuality and or being queer in their use of language, and they can, I don't know, they can change. They are movable. I like that. I like flexibility in queer poetry and queer translation.
Yeah, I don't know what else to add. I think like we talked a bit about kind of erasing binaries and how like translation is very much put as a you've got the source text and then you've got the target text. I think I might have mentioned, before I met you, I think I might have mentioned in my interview your poetry because you write code switch poetry, and I kind of think it's not in any of mine. You don't have any. Do you have any English words left in your text?
What text?
Oh, in your Spanish version.
Oh, Jackie?
Yeah.
Yeah, songs. When there's like there's Cooridoon, which is like this lullaby from Scotland. Did I pronounce it wrong? Are you laughing? Yeah, and I left it in English, like specific things like that, or the names of places. I left them in English. Yeah, that's my window.
I'm thinking, I'm probably going to put my foot wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that there's nothing left in Spanish in just the names. Rafa, Rafita. That's a really interesting example, actually, because it's a bit late to get onto all this, isn't it? So we talked about the coyotes being female in the name of the event, and it's kind of like paradox that in English we don't have male and female animals don't have different names. So like dog, well, actually that's a bad example. I'm just gonna. So you don't have the option of changing O and A at the end of the word, or O and E in this case. So I kind of added this French double ES to make the coyotes like very decidedly female because it's what Paula was trying to get Roadrunner to do. But yeah, I think that that really, in terms of the kind of code switching and mixing the languages together, that in this case, I forgot what I was going to say. No, I really have forgotten what I was going to say.
That's fine.
I knew it would be bad getting into grammar at the end of the night.
It's interesting you mentioned the coyotes because I did a little bit of research on sort of coyotes and kind of the meaning, and I there's this meaning coyote as the smugglers, the people who smuggle people from the border from Mexico to the US, Central Americans, but migrants crossing to the border. And I was thinking about the translator, someone moving from one place to the other, taking the language from one place to another, crossing that kind of border, some sort of border. And I thought that was quite beautiful. And also coyotes in many indigenous communities in Central America, but also the Navajo community in the North America. There's this really wonderful kind of myth about power and about trying to appease the moon and being involved with kind of humans, but also with animals, being in between life and death. And this kind of border place. And I thought about translators being people who kind of are in this kind of border place, border land. So I thought that was quite a beautiful connection with coyotes. So anyway, yes, do you want to say?
No, but I always want to speak, so let's just close this before you fall asleep.
So before we go, I thought it would be nice for you to read another poem, final poem.
Not cooperation.
1 second.
Collaboration. Have we said that already? We're really happy that we got on so well, aren't we? It's like...
Yeah, we are. It was weird. It was not a requirement.
Yeah, no one
to
said that we
become
had
so
to have,
friendly.
we had a Zoom at 1 o'clock every Monday for, like you said, like
Yeah.
weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. And they didn't force us to be friends. Like, it just happened. Yeah.
Sorry, it's turned over as well. So
There you
let's hope that doesn't lock up again.
go. Okay.
Oh, I haven't got my glasses on. Would Jane Eyre come to the information desk? Would Jane Eyre come to the information desk? The speaker voice at Heathrow Airport said. There was I minding my own business, and when she came near, she was shouting, "My name is Bertha, my name is not Jane Eyre. I come from Kingston, Jamaica. Look here." Well, they'd placed handcuffs on her. Wrasse. She shook her black hair and stamped her feet in anger. "I have as much soul as you." She was shouting to the immigration officer, and full as much heart, "My name is Bertha." And the man was waving a form in her face, saying, sign here, Jane Eyre, sign here." "Stop shouting, dear, or you'll end up in holding." Bertha was dignity, quality. Know what I'm saying? "I am no bird, and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will," she say in a voice come down from century. Hey, for a minute I thought I was dreaming, but wait, just as suddenly as she appear, she disappear, pulled across the floor, kicking, screaming, and a long queue instantly forming, like a giant question across Terminal 4. And people saying the same thing, appalling, the way they treat that woman, poor thing. Who was she? Who was Jane Eyre? Who was Bertha? And the information people saying over and over, we are not at liberty to say anything. We are not at liberty, know what I'm saying? And it's me they're accusing of paranoia, ting ting.
Jane Eyre, por favor, acercarse al mostrador. Jane Eyre, por favor, acercarse al mostrador. Dijeron en el aeropuerto de Heathrow por el altavoz. Ahí yo estaba ocupándome de lo mío. Y cuando ella se acercó, estaba gritando, yo me llamo Berta, no me llamo Jane Eyre. Soy de Kingston, Jamaica. Fíjese. Y bueno, la habían esposado. Ras, revolvió el pelo negro y pataleó contra el piso enojada. Tengo tanta alma como tú, le gritaba al empleado de migraciones, y tanto corazón. Yo me llamo Berta. Y el hombre le agitaba un formulario en la cara, diciendo, firme acá, Jane Eyre, firme acá. Deje de gritar, señorita, o va a acabar detenida. Y Berta era dignidad, calidad, ¿ya tú sabes? No soy ningún pájaro y ninguna red me atrapa. Soy un ser humano libre con voluntad propia, dice en una voz que ha llegado de milenio. Ey, por un momento pensé que estaba soñando. Pero un momento, así de rápido como ella aparece, ella desaparece. Arrastrada por el piso, pateando, gritando. Y al instante se fue formando una larga fila como una pregunta enorme por la Terminal 4. Y toda la gente decía lo mismo, un desastre, como tratan a esa mujer. Pobre Tití. ¿Quién era? ¿Quién era Jane Eyre? ¿Quién era Berta? Y la gente del mostrador decía una y otra vez, no tenemos la libertad de confirmar nada, que no tenemos la libertad. ¿Ya tú sabes? Y a mí me están acusando ellos de paranoia. Titi.
Antes yo me llamaba de otro modo. Antes yo me llamaba de otro modo hasta que al final te conocí y me llamaste por mi nombre verdadero. Entonces me di cuenta, como si hubieras corrido con tu voz un velo, una piedra invisible, insoportable, detrás de la cual seguía mi propia vida, y apenas si podía darme cuenta. Ese fue, estoy seguro, mi único y deslumbrante bautismo de fuego, y no hubo nadie a nuestro alrededor. Lo recuerdo perfectamente. Recién salido de la ducha, abriste los ojos y me miraste como quien encuentra un jeroglífico detrás de una pared, y me dijiste: desde ahora voy a llamarte así, Leo. Leo, me dijiste, como si Dios, que es tan comprensivo algunas veces, te hubiera susurrado al oído mi nombre verdadero, ese que nadie, ni siquiera yo mismo, podía llegar a conocer, y al hacerlo te hubiera dicho sencillamente: Rafita, haceme caso, llámalo así, Leo, pero no como Leopardi, sino como Leonardo DiCaprio. Sí, no te rías. A ese nombre tan bello y tan absurdo obedece directamente su corazón.
Before, I was called something different. Before, I was called something different until finally I met you and you called me by my real name. Then I turned, as if your voice had cast away a veil, an invisible stone, unbearable, behind which continued my actual life, which I'd hardly been aware of. That was, I'm certain, my one dazzling baptism by fire, and there was nobody around but us. I remember it perfectly. Fresh from the shower, you opened your eyes and looked at me, like someone finding a hieroglyph behind a wall, and you told me, from now on, I'm going to call you Leo. Leo, you told me, as if God, who can be so understanding sometimes, had whispered my real name in your ear. The one that no one, not even I, had managed to find. And in so doing, he'd simply said to you, Rafita, listen up, call him Leo. But not like Leopardi, more like Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, stop laughing. That's the name, so lovely and absurd that his heart directly answers to.
I'm going to finish with a poem of my own. This is a poem from my collection, Ballad for a Happy Immigrant, and it's a specular poem, and it's dedicated to Pablo. The Fall. Be kind to me, you said to the oval mirror, and I followed through the palm-infested night. A simple path reflected simply, brothers alike brothers. Kiss is un beso to a kiss. Our twin images akin, our mirror divided and announced. Can you hear us? Opened to a subtropical void that's only us going carnivorous. Flowers slowly unpicked, with symmetrical hands into the light we plunged down the cracks. We didn't have to fall. Listen to our tongues, how we met, how we stayed as one, how we spent the first night together, how we met, how we stayed as one, how we spent the first night together, how we listened to our tongues. We didn't have to fall down the cracks. We plunged into the light with symmetrical hands, slowly unpicked carnivorous flowers that's only us going to a subtropical void. Can you hear us? Opened mirror, divided and announced, our twin images akin, our kiss is un beso to a kiss. Brothers are like brothers, a simple path reflected simply through the palm-infested night. And I followed, you said to the oval mirror, be kind to me. Thank you all so much for coming today. Thank you, John and Paula and Bern. And thank you, Oxford Brookes University and the Jan Michalski Foundation and the Arts Council for funding us and for funding this wonderful project. And yeah, thank you all for coming. It's been wonderful. Thank you.